Thank you for attending the press conference. I wish to start by saying that most people in Guyana are anxiously awaiting the consequential orders from the Caribbean Court of Justice tomorrow. And those orders will be very important for all of Guyana. However, I need to make a few points very clear here. That the orders cannot reverse what the court has ruled on already. And the court has, after the long challenge by the government of the no confidence motion, has ruled that the no confidence motion is validly passed, and therefore Articles 1066 and 1067 of the Constitution kick in. And so now that we have released our submissions to the public, because the Attorney General released his a few days ago, you would see that what we asked is consistent with the Constitution of Guyana. The first is that since the no confidence motion was declared valid by the court, and the court itself said that the Constitution must be respected, that the orders just repeat what is already in the Constitution. It is redundant, but it's necessary for repetition of the court. So the first thing we ask that it be declared that the cabinet, including the president, shall resign. But the courts really don't need to put that in the order. That's in the Constitution of Guyana. That's in the Constitution of Guyana. And secondly, that the government shall remain in office for 3 months, acting as though the no confidence motion had been passed only when the court made its final determination of the matter. So 3 months from that date, consistent with the 3 months deadline in the Constitution, and that elections be held within those 3 months. The government has asked the court to extend the timeline by reconvening Parliament, or allowing the reconvening of the Parliament to see if they will get the 2/3 majority necessary to extend the life of the government. That's asking us whether we will support them. And the answer is a categorical no. The answer is a categorical no. We will not support an extension of the life of the government, and only the People's Progressive Party can do that because the government does not have 2/3 vote in the National Assembly. So although the matter is before the CCJ on the no confidence motion, the country is quite clear what the Constitution says. And so when I hear about Harman saying that somewhere that the cabinet will meet until the CCJ provides clarity, clearly their ability, I don't question his ability to read and understand. I know I can question that for some other people, the other lawyers in the government, but I don't question their ability to read and understand. The language of the Constitution is clear. Upon the successful passage of a no confidence motion, the cabinet, including the president, shall resign. What is it that they don't understand about that? What is it they don't understand about that? This is just another attempt. He says they have to stay in office to govern. I beg to differ. They want to stay in office to steal in this period, not govern. And that is why they're clinging on in defiance of the Constitution, in defiance of plain, simple language that a child could understand. Suddenly, they can't understand it. So let's don't look for the reasons in the realm of reason. Let us look for their real reasons or logic. Let's look for their real reasons in the realm of where they want to hang on to power in defiance of the Constitution. That's one. So regardless of what happens tomorrow, that's what I effectively am saying. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, the court did not change the Constitution of Guyana, and the court cannot rule in defiance of the Constitution of Guyana. And so the 3 months deadline for elections will be there, is in our Constitution. It hasn't been deleted by the CCJ. And the cabinet and the president shall resign. That provision has now been deleted. So we are quite clear on that matter. Court order tomorrow or not. On the second matter, and on this issue, the very same issue, we've asked the court to order that the list that was in place at the time when the elections should have been held, March 21st, because the list was valid, the list that they didn't have a problem with for local government elections was valid up to April 30th. And so we asked the court to rule that that very same list that would have been valid had they respected the Constitution to be the basis on which, of course, with the appropriate claims and objection periods so people who are not on may get their names on and you can get other names off, etc., that list be the list that is used. Now, quite interesting that last year, this government, GCOM, invited the UN to send in that they wanted assistance from the United Nations in the form of a consultant. So the United Nations sent down an entire team of people, and they did a report on the situation in GCOM. And this is the report here, report of the United Nations Electoral Needs Assessment Mission, 7th to 11th of May 2018. The summary of the report says, it is the view of the mission that there is no certainty that a new voters list will have more credibility than the current one, the current list, so that's clear, and that stakeholders will trust it more. Furthermore, any list created close to the elections will likely be criticized as politically motivated. This is the UN electoral mission that came here last year, advised against creating a new list, which is what they want suddenly. I suspect because of this, Patterson then refused to the consultant that was ready to come and work in GCOM because of this assessment. So the list, even the United Nations Electoral Mission that came to Guyana, recognized that the list that you have to use is the one developed through continuous registration, and the list that was valid up to April 30th. So we are not in bad company. We're not in bad company when asking the court to use that very same list that they didn't have a problem with for 4 elections. Now, to use that. That's part of our request to the court too. On the Patterson matter, Patterson was resigned, so we asked the court to, and that in itself is a positive development. So for many people who are waiting on a consequential order on this matter, prior to a few weeks ago, in fact, we had a chairman of the Elections Commission who was unilaterally appointed by the president, who did not enjoy the support of the opposition because his name did not originate from a list or any of the lists that the leader of the opposition sent to the president. He was appointed in defiance of our Constitution. That has been corrected now. So that is clear too. That's a positive. No matter what happens tomorrow, that can't change. He has been removed because of that process. And the courts have said now that the new chairperson must enjoy the support of the president and the leader of the opposition. The court did not change the Constitution. The court gave some advice as to how the process could work. That is through the engagements. But the Constitution remains unaltered, as the president himself pointed out in the press conference after the meeting that we had. The leader of the opposition will submit 6 names, and only after his only constitutional requirement is to consult with the non-governmental political parties in Parliament. That's clear. That's in the Constitution. What we are doing here now is we are trying to, through a consensual approach, try to get a list so that, as the CCJ says, should these names reappear, then the president can't reject them too. But it does not take away the right of the leader of the opposition given to that office through the Constitution of Guyana, that the final 6 will come from the leader of the opposition. And therefore, we have embarked on this process in good faith. Now, you saw our letter yesterday. And the letter sought, because we've had several engagements, and when we met, the president and I agreed. In fact, I suggested that the setting that we had was not conducive with so many people in the room to the discussion. And I suggested the president and I meet with a smaller group, maybe 1 each, to advance the process. And then there was an alternate suggestion that we have representatives. But one thing that was clear is that the representatives will act and come to the meeting after having discussion with their principals. That is the leader of the opposition and the president. So when they come to the meeting, they are fully apprised of what needs to happen. They'll come with, if there are reasons, objective reasons why the president feels that a name should not be on the list, that he doesn't find it name not unacceptable to him, then that could be shared there. Or if he finds the name not unacceptable to him, that could be communicated at that level to obviate the need for the meeting between the president and I personally. So it was with our imprimatur. Now, the engagements we've had so far, the first one, we showed up and we submitted the 11 names and which we agreed to. We showed up, and then instead of having a discussion, they gave us a list. They gave us a list and said to us, here is our list of 8 names. They could have easily sent the list ahead of time, like we did, and to allow the discussion to take place, but no discussion on the first day. Then the second day we met for 2 hours, our representatives, and some reasons were given, and I've been briefed about those reasons. And that is why I want to know if the president actually, those are reasons given by the president to reject those names, or by these three individuals who have no constitutional authority? Those were their reasons and not the president's reason for rejecting it, because some of the reasons are really frivolous, and although they agreed not to disclose the reasons whilst we are having the discussion in the middle of the negotiation, but the CCJ said clearly that the people of Guyana and the leader of the opposition must be given objective reasons. And at some point in time, they shall be disclosed. They shall be disclosed. So we wanted to know that, but we didn't have clarity on that issue. And then we heard about concepts like no objection, tending towards acceptability, shortlisted. And our representatives sought clarity. Does this mean all these concepts? Does any of them mean that the president finds those names unacceptable? Because if you have so many categories, and the answer was, we can't tell you yet. So now they're exercising at the level of the representative, it seems, their own judgment in eliminating names, and then still have to send those to the president. They have not received instructions as yet. So in that context, we're actually wasting time. In that context, and that's why we suggested yesterday that this may be just a delaying tactic, as I had warned right when we came out of the meeting, that we have to watch out for this short period, that they may seem like they're full of cooperation, want to be helpful, etc. And once we get past the order of the court, because we've asked that there is a time-bound arrangement for the leader to make that determination, once you get past the consequential order of the court, because the court would feel, oh, there is a process ongoing, let's not interfere in this, that thereafter everything slows down. Be consistent with their trust to delay elections, and using this as an issue. So we are very cautious about that, the time wasting, and that's why we wrote the letter yesterday, to bring clarity to certain issues. And we said, if this is a time wasting thing, then let's go back to the leader of the opposition meeting directly with the president on this matter. Let's go back to that engagement. So if he says directly, I find this name acceptable or unacceptable, then we can discuss that. Or if he gives a reason, I can say, I feel that's not an objective reason, directly to his face, rather than go through these representatives, because we right now do not know on whose behalf they're speaking. I know the three persons there are speaking on my behalf. They're in touch with me. Whatever they reflected in meeting, they have my imprimatur. So this is what we're trying to do. And it's very transparent what is happening. So let me now mention the 8 names they submitted. There is no need, I heard about need for discussion of the 8 names. If the Constitution says I choose the final 6 names, then, and the president sends me 8 names that are not unacceptable to him, then what is the discussion? Because I already know if I put one of those names, there would be not, or 5 of those names, or all 6 there would be not unacceptable to him. I don't need to discuss that. What we are going through now is a process to determine of our names what's not unacceptable to him. So what the discussion? There's no requirement I say to him which of the 6 or if any of the 6 I'll put on. There's no requirement, constitutional or otherwise. So I don't know why the big confusion around this matter. He sent me 8 names. I have nothing adverse to say about those names. Many people in the public domain have complained and argued about how duplicitous and shameless they are. by putting some names who are political card-bearing members of the party, and when they objected to names that they invent a link to the PPP on. But we're not here to discuss names. The names have been submitted by the president, and I have those. But we're trying now to reach, to move this process forward. So we know, and today's Harman's response is designed precisely to get past tomorrow. So we wrote him saying, we want to get a response from you. You tell us what the president is thinking now. You had up to yesterday, are these names acceptable to the president that you mentioned in the public shortlisted and up for consideration and tending towards approval? Are these names unacceptable, not unacceptable to the president? And again, another letter to say, oh, come to the meeting this afternoon at 4 o'clock. We'll have a good engagement. We'll drink some coffee, etc. We take this business seriously. That is it. And it's transparent for the whole country to see what they're doing. But how long are they going to run from this? That's my point. They're not can't run forever. And every single day people see this. They're hanging on. They use every ploy in the book to try to hang on to power and to delay the elections. But the Constitution is there, and therefore they're in defiance of the Constitution. And they're right now illegal, and nothing would change their illegal status except elections. Nothing will change their illegal status. So right now we have an illegal president, but we treat him de facto, and we have illegal ministers running all over the place. We have an illegal prime minister who's squatting in the office. That's what they're doing. They hung squatters out from reserve, etc. They're squatting in office. They're the biggest squatters in the country. So that's what I wanted to say on those two matters. So for me, the consequential orders, whether we get everything that the PPP has asked for or not, they don't change the Constitution of Ghana. And they don't change two facts. One is that the new chairman of GCOM, whenever that appointment takes place, must have the confidence of both sides. The courts have ruled on that, interpreted the Constitution. And two, they have no other way of changing their illegal status except through elections. There's no confidence motion has been validly passed. So, so people should just keep working. The activists on our side, particularly, who've been calling me every day, I just wanted to get that out to all of Guyana on these matters. There is something that is very bothersome because it recognizes it could be a way of sending a signal to the CCJ too, that forget court orders, we are not going to respect them. So Nagamutu started off by saying that the CCJ is just advisory. But it's not the CCJ that matters, as I said before, it's the Constitution. That it is not mandatory, basically. That it's not coercive, it's advisory. Another minister said, this is a sovereign country. So we have the king. In sovereign countries, you have the king who can't be challenged, the monarchy. And so, King Granger, we have. And so this is what they're heading towards. So this matter, where the president intervened directly to prevent the Minister Jordan from being thrown in jail, or Mr. Jordan from being in jail, is not just interference in the judiciary of the worst kind, but also, I think, wanting to send a signal to the CCJ. We will defy any order that you make. And so let's deal with the implications of what they have done. So this is the worst act of interference in the judiciary I think we have seen for a long time, and this government has had several of those engagements. And I've not seen the thinkers and the analysts come out the same way, where if mere suggestions from the president under the PPP, like you would say, oh, the sentence on this issue is too harsh, they used to come out and say, oh, interference, PPP is interfering in the judiciary. A mere statement from the executive at that time. Now there's been an open assault on an order of the court, preventing one of their kind so that he doesn't have to obey an order of the court. Orders of the court have to be obeyed by all citizens of Ghana, except for this tiny corrupt cabal. They are above the law, they're above orders of the court. So this minister is above the law. That's the first point they're making. It doesn't apply to us, it applies to everyone else. So that is it. The president did that. But what has it done for Guyana apart from the obvious, the executive interfering in the judiciary? It has now destroyed an already poor investment climate. We recognize that this country, they've not had much investments in the past except in the oil and gas sector, which is natural because of ExxonMobil here. But now, imagine an investor coming to Guyana or sitting any part of the world and saying, okay, I have a commercial dispute with the government. I go to the court and the courts give me an order. Even at the CCJ, this is the highest level, the courts give me an order to protect my interests. The government then refuses to implement the order. And when I go back to the court and get another remedy, the government then intervenes in this dictatorial way, feature of kings, a feature of kings where they prevent the enforcement of the order. That is a destruction of the business climate. So I was not surprised to see that the private sector condemn it. But they came in for severe criticism from the government because they're trying to protect the business climate. Secondly, this has made all of the public debts, the publicly guaranteed debts, bad debts now. Because who is to believe that this government, if people call their loans or they try, the loan goes into default, and you try to enforce on the collateral produced by the government or that supports it, that backs the loan, that this government will respect it. You can't enforce on the collateral. So it made our sovereign debt now illegal and worthless. And that's the kind of signal that the narrow-minded cabal, corrupt cabal that resides in this government, that they don't see. They don't see. So Nagamutu says, PM judge says judge's action smacks of vendetta. Imagine if, and I don't know what the leadership of the judiciary is doing, because this is an open assault on the judiciary and on a member of, or members of the judiciary, because there are several judges who participated in this act. Several judges in the judiciary. And they're saying if PPP had said every time we get a ruling that this is a vendetta, the country right now would have gone berserk. But he gets away, this useless prime minister that we have gets away with this sort of assault. But of course, all that he's doing is singing for his supper. All that he is doing, nothing else. Has no other purpose except in government or elsewhere, except do this. And the Attorney General, I look at the Chronicle, I'm not going to go through this whole, the bilge that they have here, but he says, I personally hope that I can get my day at the appeal court to find out whether indeed this is a situation that can happen, where a minister can be sued in his personal capacity to pay a judgment that has not been made against the state. If that were to be upheld by the appeal court, then many of us would begin to rethink our public service if you can be held for something that you never did. These are the people who charge Ashni Singh and Brassington for implementing cabinet decisions. They're personally there. They had to find $2 million per case in bail money. Personally had to find that to face the courts after they implement cabinet decisions. And now he is worried about this, that ministers can't be sued in the personal capacity. But this is the kingdom now. We have a kingdom now, not a democracy anymore. So just imagine how stupid this argument is from our Attorney General. How stupid it is. And this is his reason. What about all of the people who've been charged for discharging, not personal decisions that they made, decisions of the state, and they're now facing criminal charges in the court in a personal capacity? So suddenly he's worried about this. And the Court of Appeal must tell him this. This is destruction. But this all happens when you're sliding downwards. This all happens. And they've seen the writing on the wall. I've seen, I want to address a few other issues, but before I do so, quite a few policemen met me. And they are very, very concerned with what's happening now. And I assure them that they wanted to get clarity on a few issues. And so I said to them at a press conference, I will do so, because they say they speak to many others. So today I just want to mention a couple of things that they asked me about. They asked about whether we will use the seniority structure to effect promotion and whether it will be respected. That politicians will not come in and capriciously choose their friends to hold positions. And I pointed out to them our track record on this matter. And I said to them, yes, that there will be respect for the seniority structure. And that is, they wanted to hear that. Secondly, they asked about interference. They're very, very concerned with the interference from Minister Felix, from Paul Slow, from Ramjatan, and all of the others. Almost Harman. Everybody seems to think that they can run the police force. They give instructions to policemen at the lower level. The ministers, anytime they and their relatives get into any issue, they call the stations directly and instruct policemen how to act, and many of them they're threatened. I assure them that that will never happen. That will not happen. We believe in the leadership of the police force being respected, and the independence, especially on operational matters. You had some horror stories about people who called them, people who were politically connected, right up in the hierarchy, and threatening them and their families. They have to release their family after serious transgressions in the law. And they're worried about that. I assure them this. I assure them they were concerned about the bonus again, whether it is just a wild promise. And I said to them, look at our track record. The APNU took away the 1-month bonus for the police, the firemen, the prison service, and for the army. And we'll reintroduce the 1-month tax-free bonus. So this is not something that we've been hiding. We've been speaking about this for a long time. So this is something that they have looked at. Some of them are very concerned about the prisons and what's going on in the prisons. And again, that there seems to be interference in the prison issue. I need to we assure them we'd look at that, and that there are a few people who are connected, very few policemen, they're president's boys, that who can get away with impunity with any acts in the police force itself. These are a few hand-picked policemen. And so I assure them that rogue action will not be tolerated. So I just wanted to say that to them because they said their colleagues are very, very concerned about these issues. On the same matter, I saw now that the group have moved from executive of mourning families and friends in white, the 6 persons who came here, they have now moved to ask the president for a commission of inquiry. They're very late. The president now has no powers to put in place commissions of inquiry. He has no power because the powers were truncated when his government moved into a caretaker capacity. His sole purpose is to hold elections if he follows the laws. Nevertheless, we don't have a problem with this. I make it clear. We don't have a problem. The president missed 4 years, nearly 5 years now. We've been calling for this. And we're saying, let's do it openly, terms of reference established. Let's bring in some international jurists to do the commission of inquiry. And we have nothing to fear in the PPP. And in fact, many of those who reside in government may very well get into serious hot water because of the commission of inquiry. Many of the top leaders of APNU. So we don't have a problem with commission of inquiry into any killing in the past. We don't have a commission problem into looking into crumb weaving or whatever else. We don't have a problem with it. But this government has had 4 years and a few months now to do this, and they've refused to do this. But now they're coming to look at it. So the next thing I wanted to address is Jordan. I must say, I like this word unhinged. Unhinged means like when you have a door and somebody hit the door or something and it becomes like white. I'm giving not a scientific definition of the word unhinged, but in my head I see it in that way, like people who go running mad, getting crazy. So obviously this no confidence motion and the prospect of losing power is shaking a lot of people up. They're going crazy. Jordan must be one of those. For anyone to send out a budget circular now, when there is no parliament, there will be no parliament to pass a budget. When you have to go to elections, etc. This demonstrates clear manifestation of unhingedness. So now he says there will be a salary increase in 2020 for public servants. We all know that servants always get salary increases. He talks about a salary increase in 2020. Let me say to Jordan, if they succeed in dragging things out, not that we will give in, we'll fight against any attempt to move past the 3 months. We'll address the international community. We'll sought international pressure and sanctions on this government, the same that President Granger spoke about and sought in the 2015 period when he was calling for elections. We'll do the same thing like he did. But if they succeed and you go to January, there's no budget. There's no budget. So you have to move to the 112 provision on the recurrent budget and no new capital project. And so all this government spending ceases. And imagine with the big spending by the government in the economy, we're barely being able to keep our heads afloat. Much less, just imagine how much worse it will get after that period. Because there will be no budget from January 1. So you have to move until 112 on the recurrent side and nothing on the capital. So this is it. And we keep warning the public servants about how they act in this period. Please don't take political instructions. So this is a manifestation of this government not recognizing how deep in hot water it is. It just goes around. It goes around the place. Look at what Jordan has just said. Now, I'm not going to focus today extensively on the land issues because we'll come back to that. Just that, just in passing, I just want to say, I see Mr. Bristol saying that's not his plan and intention to use these prime areas that were set aside for Deepwater Harbor, to build Deepwater Harbor. So the Commission of Lands and Survey took our prime lands that the government Deepwater Harbor should go at, said he changed the land use and gave it to a man now who works at the office of the president, who says it's not my intention, I plant some coconut trees there. And the country, all of us, all Guyanese, people of every race, every political persuasion, we lose the land that would build the Deepwater Harbor, the prime area for the Deepwater Harbor that can bring benefits to all of our people. And he wants that. That's what he's effectively saying. I don't have anything with Deepwater Harbor. Nonsense, pure nonsense. I'll come back to him. I see our dear friend Eric Phillips is getting deeper and deeper into hot water. Deeper. Hasn't the mask been revealed as yet, removed? Now you see glimpses of the real people emerging. And people who have no concern for the cause that they say they champion, ordinary Afro-Guyanese cause, who are more concerned about themselves. Just read the papers. And isn't it even worse that the person who speaks so eloquently and with such integrity about oil blocks, and he is the chief investigator on behalf of the president, himself has an application pending for the oil blocks just in the same area? It is unbelievable. So I didn't see the rush to hold press conferences about this one. If it had come from me, then I guess you would have had the accusations of racism and the rush to hold press conferences, etc. I'm glad it came from the Kaichou News. But this is just scratching the surface. It's just scratching the surface. And as I said before, there is a small cabal, maybe 1,000 of them, who will take everything before we realize it, and nothing would be remaining for the 800 or 1,000 of us. The other. That is what is happening now. All in the name of, oh, we're doing this to empower Afro-Ghanese. Afro-Ghanese didn't even know he was doing this. You think the people in Blackbush Polder, or you know, like in Little Africa in Blackbush Polder or somewhere else, or Mukka knew about this? Or the people in Linden knew about this? Really? And so I'm not going to mention, because there are some names there on that list that these are legitimate business people. I'm going after those who are connected to the office of the president, who have been the vocal ones. I'm not too interested in the other names down there, etc. I'm not too interested, because as Guyanese, they have a right to apply until if they get political. Now, Sean Hopkinson, he has gone political. He says, I have to, so he's written a letter, and I will deal with Sean Hopkinson a little bit later. I'll talk not just about this, I'll talk about mining, and I talk about his connection to the gaming authority and the corruption there, about selling licenses. I will link him to the two things later. And so, because he wants to go, he's going political now. Suddenly, I saw him writing in the newspapers. So we'll talk about those two things at a subsequent date. At the GRA, we're not getting answers. So apart from the 5,000 bottles of liquor, there's another group that they seized some liquor from and gave it to one Jermaine. So enforcement unit seized the liquor, and then they released the container to a Jermaine. I have his title too, I'm not going to call the title, but without any taxes being paid. Without any taxes. That this here, it's estimated that this will be about something like $40 million, the liquor that he got. So this is outside of the 5,000 bottles. It seems like it's a racket going on there. And I've not heard any word about marijuana and the corruption, the fuel smuggling scandal. Has anyone called GRA from the media to ask, is it true that there a massive scam governing fuel smuggling has been discovered at marijuana? And what is it that they are doing? Why is it that it has not made the public light as yet? So somebody needs to do that. I'll come back to all these issues a little bit later. David Hines, I'll just end. I saw Van West Charles now too in the newspaper, 601 acres that is in the mining area. He's the latest one. So let's now go back. I don't want to deal with the corruption issue today. I've dealt with it for a while, and I'll come back at another press conference. I just want to end here with this David Hines. So David Hines, David Granger brought back dignity to office. Dignity to office means he has a cushy job, his relatives have a cushy job, his friends have a cushy job. Forget that 30,000 jobs were lost under David Granger's tenure in office, short tenure in office. Forget that they took away the $10,000 grant from school kids. Forget that they've put VAT on food and water and electricity and all of the everything else. Forget that they've increased licensing fees. So forget all of that. Afro-Guyanese, that is what he's saying now. must forget everything but just vote for them because they're of our kind. This is the kind of politics we're trying to break. This is an ultimate act of racism, that ordinary people must vote on the basis of race regardless of what the government does to them. If they lose their jobs, they can't feed their children, they can't do anything else, they must suffer. Whilst they, the ones who are saying this, are cushy, they're driving, they're getting their Land Cruisers for 300,000 Guyana dollars. They can buy a Land Cruiser for 300,000 Guyana dollars. Or get cushy trips abroad, etc. Or get oil blocks, apply for oil blocks, or 2,000 acres of land, which could develop 10,000 house lots, and the other man can't get it. But no, no, no. Support us because we look like you. This country has to move past that politics. Move past it. And this is, it's sad to see the true colors of people like David Hines are being revealed now. For years, they held themselves out to be above the fray. Above the fray. This is the same man who wanted a commission of inquiry, a Gestapo-like commission of inquiry in the public service to hunt PPP moles. That is whistleblowers, people who are exposing the corruption of this government. That's it. He's very quiet on all of this revelation about all the big land issues. He would not say a word about them. He would not say a word about them. So we got to be cautious about these people. Guyana is for all of our people, and we have to look out for people everywhere. We have to make sure that they benefit everywhere, wherever they live and regardless of who they vote for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I just need a few clarifications. In the President's address to the nation yesterday, he said that both sides agreed to establish a joint working group which would shortlist the names to 6 and present the list to the leader of the opposition before it is presented to me. He said it was also agreed that the exchange of names or list of officials of name will include also suggestions which the President presented for the inclusion of the list. Does that mean that the final
Well,
list...
that's not true. We never. That's absolutely untrue. That must have come from the people who drafted it. All we agreed to at the meeting was we restated the process. So we had clarity on one issue, that the Constitution of Guyana remained unchanged. The CCJ decision did not alter the Constitution. And if you want to know what is the truth, then go to the President's press conference held immediately after the meeting. Not a prepared speech address the nation which Basil and Harman may have their hands in. But go to what he said at that meeting. When he came out immediately from the meeting, unprepared to speak about it, he said, the CCJ did not alter the Constitution of Guyana. That means that the leader of the opposition has to submit 6 names and only consult with the non-political party, the non-governmental political party in Guyana. That's what it meant. He said something to the effect, I can't be giving him names and then appoint the same people. Look at the press conference. And he said Patterson was part of electoral history. 3 things he said. So when we went to that meeting, 1, we agreed that the Constitution is quite clear, that we will meet both sides, as I explained earlier. Both sides will meet to try to hammer out names. That there are 11 names that, well, at that time I didn't know. I said we'd like to resubmit the 18 names. He asked, have you spoken with the people? And I said, no, not as yet. I'll get in touch with them to ask who would like to have their names go forward back, those who would decline. 11 of those agreed to have their names resubmitted. That's what we did. We agreed that the team will meet, a small team with delegated authority. Nothing about inclusion of his names. That is the discretion of the leader of the opposition. So this is precisely where they're gearing up. For basically a fight. And this president, I don't understand him. I don't understand if he realizes it's his integrity at stake, not Basil Williams or Harman or Volder Lawrence. Because every time you reach an agreement that sounds reasonable with him, the moment you leave, he's swamped by the others and the altered. They clearly don't want elections. This is what's happening. And so every time you have to deal with this sort of thing. It's bad faith. So he says, he will tell me who of the names I want to, that we have to give him back. He gives me 8 names. I'll pick his names and give him back. And then I have to tell him which of the 8 names. That's overturning the Constitution of Guyana.
One of the names he submitted was retired Justice James Patterson. During the hammering out process thus far, was his name outrightly rejected by the opposition?
I just pointed out that the president has submitted 8 names to me. That's it. Well, then the question, why that I'm not going to speak anything disparaging about the 8. I take those as people who are not unacceptable to him. And therefore, when I select the final 6, which is in my discretion, the names of the people, the final 6 will go forward. After the hammering out of all these names, I will determine whether any from the 8 will form part of the final 6. But that is, I don't need to discuss these names. He has already said these names are not unacceptable to me.
Okay. Sir, yesterday in the letter that you sent to Director General Harman, you asked for a response by mail, which was provided, and you said in the latter part of the letter that if it is not clear whether they are acting based on consultation with the President, then the opposition will choose to revert to the constitutional process of just submitting the names. But in his letter to you, in his response, he did not make this clear. What is the status quo now?
Well, he's pleading for the 4 p.m. meeting hopefully the clarity will come there. So that's what he said. Let's meet at the 4 p.m. Today, and I hope that the clarity would come there. So before the evening is through, we'll have clarity on this matter.
Mr. Jagdeo, do you believe that companies who have no track record in oil block development, in cases where, for ultra deep water exploration, only Exxon and Petrobras has the track record to do that? Do you believe that companies who don't have a track record should still be allowed to qualify to apply for licenses?
So you heard what I just said. I don't have a problem with anyone applying for anything. Any Guyanese applying for anything here. What I am offended by is someone who has been so public on the matter, like Eric Phillips, who is an investigator, who has made this issue a major issue, not just here and around the world. Being so dishonest, I can't find another word, dishonest, that he did not disclose to Guyana, and I'm sure not to the SARA or the president maybe, that he had, but they should know because they have all the applications, that he had applied for a block in the same area. And he argued that one of the reasons for them not getting, that they shouldn't have gotten, the 2 that got the blocks under Ramatar, because they don't have experience. So I don't have a problem with Guyanese applying. I have an issue about the secrecy here surrounding Sarah and the so-called investigation. And what has changed now? That is the critical thing. One thing has changed now with an application going in now versus an application going in, say, 4 years ago or 5 years ago or 6 years ago, is that now we know that we have oil. At that time, we did not know we had oil. So people were tending to be a little bit more anybody who wanted the blocks, because there are lots of blocks and people are not taking up the blocks. So you probably the due diligence was less than it should be now, because you know this is a prime asset and many people want it. So that is why we propose auctioning after we found oil, auctioning future blocks. So that is my position. The environment has changed, but I don't have a problem any Guyanese applying. It is for the people who adjudicate this to make a determination.
Okay, Mr. Eric Phillips, SARA is a corruption fighting body, and so it investigates a series of sectors, right? Well, Mr. Eric Phillips, he has opened a series of companies, including financial services and...
Generally, I'm not shocked. I myself was shocked when I read about all of this stuff.
So do you think that there are any inherent conflicts in cases where persons who own companies also serve in high-profile positions where they can significantly influence the business plan?
Yeah, but I don't have a problem in any Guyanese owning companies. It's people like Eric Phillips who place themselves on the high horse, who are connected to the government, who are treating everyone else as corrupt, you know, and everyone else should be investigated. It's people like him I have a problem with, not ordinary Guyanese. If you have, if you're, say, a public servant and you own a company and you're doing, say, some business to sell coconut oil or something else, what does that have to do? You're Guyanese, you're entitled to do this sort of thing. Once it doesn't conflict with your job, once you don't have a business that gets a contract in your own ministry like Cathy Hughes did, and nobody is doing anything about it, that is the kind of thing we have a problem with. But to say that, you know, Guyanese must be excluded from owning things, I don't have a problem with people owning, wanting to achieve more. But it's this sort of double standard. And in this case, blatant corruption, I think. You can't have your own ministry giving contracts to your company, and then you turn around and sign the check. You're signing the check on behalf of your company or receiving the check. That is the kind of thing I have. Not generally, even if they want a person. So I don't have a problem with, say, Gary Bess or somebody else trying to own a company. What's wrong with people owning companies? And it is these, you notice when the first time I mentioned, I had a lot of names. I do have a lot of names. Every week I get tons of names. But I avoided mentioning all the land issues for other people. I just linked the one to Bristol because he works in the office of the president. I linked Charles Series because his wife worked there. Eric Phillips, and Harman through Sorato Phillips. And then I spoke about Lowenfield because he has a constitutional office. Those are the 5 names I mentioned because of that. Because I think they're connected politically. And this is it. Not ordinary Guyanese trying to hustle, but they should not now engage in corrupt practices. That's why Nissil and the others who are selling out all of these lands, behind our back, all of those will be reviewed. People of Guyana have a right to know.
If these officials are in positions like this, they're in a position to unscrupulously take advantage of it. How do you regulate that?
You have to declare everything to the Integrity Commission. So what will be interesting is to see if they have declared any interest in these matters to the Integrity Commission. The same thing like when Ben came and said, Jagdeo has thousands of acres of land. It's a lie, but and he doesn't have any proof. But everything that I own, that's why I said, did I declare it to the Integrity Commission or not? So you have to declare what you own to the Integrity Commission. You have to point out if there is a conflict of interest. That is how I see it. Okay, thank you very much.